The guy
Who is that guy in the
Sorry, everyone. Yes, let's do it right. So first of all, hi, I'm Paul. I'm the director of Delaware County Historical Society. Let me just say to all of you, thank you very much for coming. I apologize that again we decided to move this indoors with the weather being what it is.
We're
It's very
happy
unpredictable.
indoors.
Good. Everyone seems happy with being indoors. Well, tonight we have a very special treat. Tonight we have a presentation from our very own Dr. Sam Lemon. So I'm going to turn things over to him, and I thank him for his time. Dr. Lemon, please, after you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Again, thank you for braving the weather to come out. And you see, if I can see, it might be better if I sit down. Yeah. And then that way I won't.
Let me know if you need me to move.
Or I can sit on your lap. Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay. I give a lot of lectures. I'm a homegrown guy. My family's been here since the Civil War. My maternal ancestors were runaway slaves from Virginia. They escaped separately from their plantations, came to Media one at a time, and they were given refuge by Isaac and Elizabeth Smedley Yarnall of Providence, Virginia. And we've been here ever since. So I went to local schools, Media until the mergers, and then graduated from Penn Crest, St. Joe's, Westchester, and Penn. And just have had this incredible interest in history, particularly family history. So I lived with my grandmom when I was a kid, and it was just a fabulous experience. We spent a lot of time together. She put out all the old family photographs on the dining room table, and then she would tell me all about the family history, and I just never grew tired of hearing of it, and I kind of soaked it up like a sponge. So by the time I was 12, I was like the family historian, and it's something that has always stayed with me ever since. So I would encourage you, to work on your own genealogies and family histories, try and preserve that. You have some amazing heroes in our own families, and it all starts with kind of that oral history. So I added some new material to this presentation, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So next. So I wanted to give a sense of, kind of how Media came to be and how, the identity of this area. And I always like to start off with acknowledging the local Lenape people who were here for some 12,000 years. So this was part of their land, which was called Lenape-Hoking. And it was just a massive amount of land. And it stretched as far north as southern New York, as far east as all of New Jersey, and then as far south as Delaware. In Delaware, there's a related tribe called the Nanticokes, and they are distinct, and they are kind of independent, but they are kind of Delaware-speaking people, and they do have a relationship with the Lenape. Word was that they were witches, so nobody ever bothered them, and so they're part of a Tidewater group. But anyway, so I don't know if any of you remember Jane Levis Carter, local historian and writer, just a wonderful person. And she wrote The Downriver People and a book about Edgemont. So the Lenape, particularly the Unami group, the group that lived in this area, their totem was the turtle. And so this is, as it says there, the Sacred Turtle Rock. It's on private land. It's in Edgemont, and it's part of the Lenape-Hoking Preserve. Next slide. So in 1701, Penn set aside this Okehocking Preserve. Okehocking was the name of the particular band that lived in this area. 500 acres was permanently given to them. They were constantly facing encroachment. And this particular area, they used in the summers, particularly for hunting and fishing. And Penn set that aside from them. You probably have driven past this plot of land many, many times. Kind of across the road from this land, there used to be a Nike missile base. Does anybody remember that from like the 1960s? Yeah. So, but there's a monument to the land, and that's kind of, what the geographics of the land in Edgemont. Next. So Penn treated the Lenape fairly. He was unusual as a colonialist, and he believed that they were members of the lost tribe of Israel, and so unlike other people who looked down on them and on Indians in general, American Indians, indigenous people, he did not, and he often had them visit at his home at Pennsbury Manor. He learned to speak Lenape himself, so he wouldn't have to rely on translators who could be dishonest, particularly when it involves land transactions, because they could say, oh, well, Penn could say, well, pay me, I'll pay you $10 for this land, and the translator said, he said pay $15 for this land. So he was really unique in that regard, and this is something I came across in a paper, a Quaker pamphlet called Your Friend William Penn, and this is a copy of a deed that 9 Indian kings. That's a European, kind of expression, because chiefs was not part of their vocabulary. They thought everybody was a king, or sometimes they call them half kings, that kind of thing. And so, this was, and he bought multiple packets of land, that eventually, expanded, all the way to the Delaware River. So the signers of this, and you can see Tanneman, who was one of the principal chiefs in this area. There's a statue to him at the bottom of Market Street and I-95 in Philadelphia. Very, very important. These other gentlemen, Seacane, that name is probably pronounced Sikani, but the town was of Seacane, was named after him. And I like this guy's name, Ikokwihan. I just think that has such a nice ring to it. But Penn was all about doing things right, and I spent 10 years on the Philadelphia Yearly Meeting Indian Committee, which back in the 90s, which was the oldest standing committee of the Society of Friends, and I met lots of Lenape from different parts of the country, because they largely got dispersed and cheated out of their land. They still spoke very highly of William Penn today, so that shows you what an impact Penn was also an enslaver, and he owned about 7 slaves, but, you got to give him credit for how he treated the indigenous people. And that's a reproduction of the Penn Treaty Belt, that the original, I think, is now in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Next. So the term is just Lenape. It's not Lenni Lenape. And that was a mistake that was made early on, probably by Moravian missionaries who were trying to translate the language. Lenape typically means the people, or the common people. The word Leni means like person, and so they kind of sort of merged the two ideas together, but that is incorrect. The Lenapes had 3 clans, and the word phratry is really more accurate. The Turtle clan, the Wolf clan, and the Turkey clan. And the reason for the phratries was that if you were a member of the Turtle clan, you could not marry another Turtle clan member. You had to marry somebody from one of the other 2 clans. And this was a pretty smart way of avoiding, keeping track of who your relatives were and avoiding incest and the biological, physiological problems that could, that's okay, that could derive from there. So phratries.
Likely to go to war against them too, I bet.
Yeah.
His sister's lives over there.
And typically, most Native societies were matrilineal, so the so the descent was followed through the woman and her children and their family, as opposed to males. Women had a great deal of authority and independence in Native societies, far unlike what white women in colonial America had. The early colonists kind of misunderstood the how the work setup was assigned, because they saw men kind of lounging around with their weapons or their tools, and they thought, these guys are kind of lazy. The women are doing all the work, but the men had to be like Minutemen. You had to be ready at a moment's notice to defend, your tribe or your village or that sort of thing. The women actually owned the property. And so if they wanted to get divorced, they would just put the man's stuff outside. And, that's the way it goes.
Right.
The Iroquois Confederacy, which was sort of like the overseers, they considered the Lenape, kind of not a subdivision exactly, but they consider themselves the protectors of the Lenapes, and they have this idea of the longhouse, and as a form of government, which Benjamin Franklin said, if these group of savages could form this government that works, it's been working since like 1100, why can't we do the same thing? And so there's a lot of consideration that may have been, the model for the bicameral form of government we have today, because there was the much like our Senate, there were the chiefs and the headmen and the head warriors and that sort of thing, but there were also the clan mothers. So it was more like Congress, and a tribe could not go to war unless the clan mothers said it was okay, unless they gave their permission. So it was a very unique society. But this kind of shows you geographically how much land the Lenape people had at this particular time. And these aren't exact because the tribal areas are kind of fluid a bit, but that gives you a good idea of the extent of their homeland. Next. So this was something I came across in a really old article in Delaware County Daily Times, and as you can see, this was an event, a commemorative event. Not a statue, but the monument is no longer there. It used to be a beaver. I think it was made out of brass in particular. Bronze. Okay. There's another one, identical one, up on 202. If you head north above 926 and you're heading toward the interchange, that is still there. At least it was last time I saw it. And it was to designate the trading path. And you can see it right there. Someone about 10 years or so ago stole it. But it was to commemorate the great Minquist path that connected the route, the trading route, linking the Delaware to the Susquehanna. Once you got into the Susquehanna area, that was the realm of the Susquehannocks. I mentioned how good Penn was. Where Newland grist mills are out on Boulder Pike, he set up a court of redress so that the Lenape, if they felt like they were not being treated fairly, or there's some financial issue or something, they were able to go to court and advocate on their own behalf. And Penn was really unique in that way. His sons were horrible. So after he goes back to England and the sons take over, they defrauded the Lenape of about 1.2 million acres of land. In this fake treaty they claimed they discovered, called the Walking Purchase. And the idea was that the Lenape ceded the amount of land that it would take for a man to walk in 2 days. So initially they weren't terribly upset by that, because in those days, the idea when you have a treaty like that, okay, how far can you walk in 2 days? So typically what you do is, you'd walk through very thick forests, you'd stop periodically to rest or go catch a squirrel and cook dinner and, sleep for the night. But what the Penn brothers did was they first cut a path in the woods with woodcutters, and then they hired a professional runner to run the distance, and that's how they got this enormous amount of land. The Lenape complained to the Iroquois Confederacy, and they wouldn't support the Lenape. I guess things were very tenuous. It was getting close to the French and Indian War. Sides were kind of lining up. Were you going to support the French or the British? So they just kind of felt, wasn't their land, exactly. Another, and it's not on here, but you probably heard about the island of Manhattan being sold for $24 worth of beads or something like that, and everybody left. Those are silly Indians. Well, the Indians who sold that wasn't their land.
Yeah.
So, they actually made a deal, a good deal on that.
Yeah.
But
I also heard that your basic, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because I've always been interested. The first thing I heard was the land is owned by the creator.
Yes.
And you can't own it.
Yeah, and so fee simple. That concept of buying land, that was unfamiliar with indigenous people. what they felt was that the Creator gave certain plots of land to particular tribes. So, but it was tribally owned. An individual couldn't, like, I think I saw a quote somewhere, how could you buy your mother? They didn't think of it that way, but you're exactly right. Next slide, please. So this area, before media was formed in 1850, this is called Providence. And, the Minchell brothers owned a lot of land. They came shortly, I think, after Penn arrived. I think they, bought land from Penn. And Jodine Mayberry, that some of you must know, she's a local writer, wrote a pretty definitive explanation of, how media came to be, how, Chester County, Delaware County got split off from Chester County. The county seat was in Chester. People from way far west in that part of the county get tired of driving all the way to Chester. It was probably, it could have taken a couple of days, to walk there, or, there weren't roads how we have now. So it was a political decision to kind of cut the Delaware County off from that, but it was still convenient in terms of Philadelphia being nearby. You can see media also was it was a planned community, and the government, I think, purchased 4 different farms and all that property together, collectively. One was the Briggs Farm. I don't know the names of the other, but it looks like some, or Taylor, that sort of thing. But Thomas Minchell lived in what is called the Minchell House, right across the street from Providence Meeting.
Still there.
He, which is still there, the oldest house in media. He gave land right near the intersection of the 5 Points intersection for a burial ground, the Sandy Bank burial ground. Very, very ancient place. That's a remarkable place. Talk about a spiritual place to be. Go visit that sometime. And there was this unique phenomena. Folks at Providence might remember, but there's this big tree with 4 main branches and kind of like a bowl almost in the center. It keeps filling up with water. It has something to, it's not just the rain. It happens to have something to do with, the fluids, the sap, and Bob Redfern could explain it to you better than I could, but it's just really a remarkable spiritual place. So the first meeting house on the Providence property was completed in the 1700s, and then in 1808 to 1809, a one-room schoolhouse was built there on that property behind the log cabin. And then, as you see, the current stone building made out of Pennsylvania fieldstone, that was built, took about 2 years from 1812 to 1814, and that's still in great shape today. Next. This is a map of media. You can find these. This is 1889. I have one from 1875 in my house. I can see my great-great-grandfather's property on Novel Street. Nice. I also have a 1909 map as well. Next. So there's always been a black community, and someone once asked me, well, when did the first blacks come to this area? And I don't know, but I know the Dutch had slaves, and they were here early on, and so they had this international travel, route as far as Indonesia. They were, the Spice Islands, and you're getting rare spices imported back. So I don't know. I think it's possible that they could have been here quite early. In the farther south, there were blacks that came. I think they were enslaved people with the conquistadors. And there's one in particular who became very, very famous. But so Campbell AME Church, which today is across the street from the Rose Tree Media School District Ed Center, that was originally behind the courthouse, and that's where it was located. That tall wall next to the church, that was part of the wall for the prison that was there as well. So I don't know if the church people thought, we need a little more elbow room. But that church was formed in 1827. So there were certainly free black people, and maybe escaped runaways, like my ancestors, who were in this area really quite early. I found James and Charles Bruce on the U.S. Census early on. They lived in a couple of different places in Springfield at one point, but in this area. But in 1871, the church kind of changed its name and formally organized as Bethel AME Church, and then they bought this property, and Robert, my friend Robert Neal here, his ancestor, Kavanaugh.
He owned the property where the current Campbell.
That's correct.
The corner of 3rd and
Yeah.
at one time, there was a huge garden. There was a whole property with a garden.
Yes. Jordan Kavanagh is his ancestor's name. Was a very prominent local businessman. He was a former U.S. Colored Troops soldier. Robert has a copy of the death certificate.
His pension application as well.
And his mother's name, what document is that on?
Which one?
The one that lists her being from Africa.
It's funny because he has 2 death certificates. And he also owned a home in Philadelphia. When he
Yes, that's right. That's right.
He has 1 death certificate from Philadelphia.
Yes.
He has 1 for the state of Pennsylvania.
Wow. Okay.
And 1 lists both of his parents as being born in Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
which is where he was born, but 1 lists his father being born in Virginia, but his mother being born in Africa.
Yes. Yes.
So
And her name isn't known today. Is that
her
correct?
first name Mildred.
Mildred. That's right.
Mildred's name.
That's right. So Robert is also, his family is historian.
He also
But
owned quite a few different properties along Olive Street.
yes, and on 3rd Street as well.
Yes.
I think I read that he had been a cobbler, a shoemaker.
Yes.
He also cut the grass for Providence Friends meeting. I have a copy of the 1909 meeting minutes, and it listed he cut the grass and what they paid for him. It was a decent amount that they paid for him. They didn't try to change him.
I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Snowden family.
Yes, oh yes.
He was friends with the Snowdens as well.
Okay. He was a wealthy man when he died. Robert, what was it, $25,000?
$75,000.
$75,000.
He passed away in 1913.
Yeah, 1913, which would be the equivalent of what, about 2.5 million today?
I think so.
Yeah. So he acquired an enormous amount of property. He was a very successful businessman, highly respected, and
I just want to say it's interesting in the Delaware County Times. It's called the Chester Times.
Yes.
It's an article published about a month or 2 after he passed away. He passed away in November of 1913.
Mm-hmm.
It mentions that he left most of his estate to his children, his 2 children, as well as grandchildren,
Yes.
and as well as a colored infirmary in Philadelphia.
That's right.
But also he had left a little bit of money to 4 white people
Yes.
in media, including one of the Snowdens.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was his name again?
Jordan Kavanagh.
Yeah. Jordan Kavanagh.
Cabernet, Cabener.
And that's when you know a black man in those days is wealthy, when he's leaving money to white people. But he was highly respected. And so this is where the church is today, at 3rd and Olive Street. He owned that lot as well, and sold that to the church. And they
And that was built after he passed.
That's-
That church,
yes.
the building, the edifice was built after he passed. But
Yes.
that was a lot, yeah.
I think the church was, I don't know the exact, 1930. Yeah. My ancestors were members of that church.
Excuse me, so that church on Olive Street, just above 4th Street, is that tied into this also? Do you know
You're
what-
talking about the one further down?
Yeah, right.
This is at 3rd and Olive. What's that around? You just about Trinity?
Are you thinking of Trinity, right near 5th and Olive?
Yes, yeah.
Yes. That's a different church. And I think
Okay.
I have a picture of them
Okay, right.
as well. So,
Sam, that picture on the left of the church, is that the one that was on the south side of 3rd Street?
can you go back one sec? Picture, which one? This one? On the left?
Yeah.
That was the original location. So that church was located behind the courthouse. That would be facing Media Providence Friends School.
Yes, like I said, that picture right now, today you'd be looking at the rear of the courthouse.
So where the county office buildings are.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like I said, the wall was the wall to the prison part of that campus. Okay. You've probably heard of Honeycomb Church, a very prestigious old church, not far from Pencrest High School. that was built in 1852. There were these large pockets of black people who lived, as far into west as Chester County. And so, yeah, some of them may have been runaways like my ancestors, but some of them, I believe, were free people as well, and were very prominent. They also were instrumental in the Underground Railroad as well. A lot of people think that it was just Quakers who were primarily involved. Quakers certainly were, but blacks and even enslaved blacks. You look at Harriet Tubman's family and some of those folks who were enslaved. They were helping her as well by giving them information and that kind of thing. So they have a number of unmarked graves, and I saw an article. I don't know if Jodine had written that. But they're one of the oldest members, I think she may have been a moat, if I'm not mistaken, remembers that they had a book with secret codes in it that identified, where some of the runaways were buried and that sort of thing. And still in her upper 90s did not really want to talk about it because she didn't want to, get anybody in trouble. So, next. So that is on the left, Trinity, UAME.
Yeah, that's.
Yes, and so I used to live next door to that. Trinity owns a set of twins. I lived in the one closest to the church on the other side of the breezeway. I lived in the parsonage, and so I lived there 19 years, as a matter of fact. That's Second Baptist. I'm sure you know that place as well, The Trinity UAME, that was part of an earlier church. It used to be called Little Haiti, behind the Route 1 bypass. There's a stone, it's not a quarry, but there's a stone company there that sells stones and bricks. That's an Italian name, I think. Galatinos, yes. So just past that was the old church. I think it was called First Marple, if I'm not mistaken. But there was a fire of suspicious origins, and some of the folks decided to rebuild there. Other folks decided to move to Media. Some of them founded Trinity, and some of them founded. There's another church in South Media. Robert, what is that?
In South Media?
Yeah, down below Wallingford Avenue. It's Saint. Can't think of the name. But
there's still a church on that road which you're referring to.
It's not the Lighthouse Church, is it?
No.
At the corner of Manchester and Wallingford?
No, this is actually about a block or two down below. It's not on Manchester, and it's not on.
Wallingford. It's
about 2 blocks.
Right. Yeah.
St. Peter's. I'll think of it like on my way home tonight.
There's still a church on what's the Old Marple Road?
Yes, there is a church
Old
there.
cemetery
Yes.
Right below.
Yeah, and you'll see flags, little American flags planted on the hillside.
They discovered a lot of those graves when they were building in 476.
Yes, where the USC teachers are buried.
I have a question
Certainly.
about that cemetery. When we went, we saw the sign, and I thought it said there was a church on top of the hill. Was there an actual church on that very steep hill, or did I read that incorrectly?
That may have been the original location of the church, but today it's located down on is that Old State Road? Next to where Galatinos is? Yeah.
I was just trying to imagine all these people trying to climb up that hill if you were in really good shape.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's being great shape. The first baptismal service, the Second Baptist, was held in Brewell's Dam in 1897, and as you can see there, in June 1901, the land on State Street was purchased. One of my grandfather's brother, William Henry Lemon, was a pastor there about 1920. Next. Providence Friends Meeting, as we have a number of representatives from today, this evening. And, I mentioned the log cabin and the one-room schoolhouse. So all the way on the far left, you can see the top, the tip of that building. That was the one-room schoolhouse. There is an underground hiding room there, and so the only way to access that secret room is through a cast iron door. And so there's a square. It's a square about not much more than big. Just large enough that I can get my shoulders down there, and the only way down is to either a rope or a ladder. And so about 5 years ago, a couple of us climbed down there on the ladder, and it was a heck of an experience. I'll tell you, it was really it was stunning. It was incredibly spiritual. It really changed me in some ways. There's a certain feeling that you get when you go down there, and you think of people hiding down there. Probably not more than a couple of days at a time until the Quakers could make the arrangements to get them to the next place, and then the next place after that. And but it's a remarkable experience. One of our a couple of, and Bruce was involved in this, setting up a camera and lighting so we can have a live feed on a TV monitor, so you can actually see what the room looks like down there, because it's a little bit of a risky climb. So we don't want anybody to fall down, and we'd have to just cover up the trapdoor and leave them down there. And that's our current meeting house today, and we have a still active burial ground behind the meeting house as well. Next. This is what it looks like. So that's a close up of the front door of the old schoolhouse, built in 1809. And we had a historical architect come, and he said that underground room was part of the original construction in 1809. That was not added later. Once we got down in that room, we could see there are 2 terracotta air vents down there as well. So that's not the place where you're going to store your root vegetables, and have to climb up and down on a ladder. That was very purposeful. Yes. And in fact, that's one of the terracotta vents. Back in the 30s, there was some construction. I think the floor of the schoolhouse had to be redone, and so that might be, I don't know, piping or something. But that's what it looks like when you open that trap door, and you want to climb down there. It's stunning. Next. So these are my ancestors who arrived as runaway slaves in Virginia, were given refuge by Isaac and Elizabeth Smedley Yarnall at Providence Meeting. My great-great-grandfather arrived first. They were on separate plantations about 20 miles apart. They were married in the South. They had a slave marriage, which was not legally recognized. Jumping the broom, they called it at that time. He was his father was his owner, and he had red hair, green eyes, and very, very fair skin. Such a light complexion that when he decided to escape, he walked 300 miles here to Media from Cape Ron, Virginia. And he said no one ever stopped him because everyone he met in Sydney was a white man. And so his wife, as you can see, much more African features. She and her brother escaped. Her brother had a 2-year-old. She had a 9-year-old and a 2-year-old daughter, and they escaped together. They waited until the Union Army was marching by on the way to the siege of Petersburg. And if you could get to the Union Army lines, they would take you in. They would not send you back. Early in the war, the Army would return you to your owners. And General Benjamin Butler said, "Why are we doing this? They're carrying ammunition for the Confederates. They're building fortifications." And so he declared them contrabands of war. And after that, because the idea, not only was it tactically important, but it also helped to impoverish the South because slaves were very expensive. The average slave owner owned 5 or less, and not many people owned slaves. It was only the really wealthy planters that did. My great-great-grandmother had, Cornelius had an actually unusual job on the plantation. He was their carriage driver. And so he said he was actually treated well. He was given clothing. He was able to drive the family around and go pick up supplies far and wide. And it was that geographic knowledge, which was unusual for a slave, because slaves typically only traveled about 5 miles from home because they didn't want them knowing where they were or how to get away. So I'm sure it was that geographical knowledge that helped him. When I was 10, my grandmother told me that her grandmother, and she knew them quite well. My grandmother was in about the age of 33 when her grandparents passed away, was a breeding woman of the plantation, starting at the age of 14. And so 14 until she escaped 10 years later with just 2 of her kids. So we don't know how many children that she had. I'm sure over the course of a decade, she had more than 2. And when she came up, when she got here, she would never discuss her life in the South again. She was just so traumatized by what happened to her. But they both became very upstanding members of the community, members of Campbell Church for 50 years until they passed away. The woman on the right is a real hero. She is Grace Hannah Lewis, who was an abolitionist, raised, I think it was West Calhoun Township in Chester County. Her parents were abolitionists. Her mother was a school teacher. From a young age, taught her science and all other kinds of things. She became a scientist herself, ornithologist, an artist. There's an oriole, white-winged oriole named after her. She became really quite prominent, but abolitionist, very, very courageous woman. So she is also buried at Providence. So before they were abolitionists, Quakers owned slaves, and so this was a point of contention. About 1688, the Germantown protest occurred. And there was a group of German Quakers from Krefeld, Germany, who came, and they started saying, hey, this is not right. Quakers should not be owning slaves. And it took about a century, I think, altogether, until you could, Bruce?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, until all of the friends could be convinced to either give up your slaves or stop being Quakers. Be read out of the meeting. So these are manumissions that our clerk Megan Barney found over at the Swarthmore Historical Quaker Library, and so you can see Thomas Whirl and others. After they manumitted their slaves, the Providence Friends did contribute funds to the education of slave children. They took my ancestors in, which was quite brave because the Federal Fugitive Slave Act was still in full force from 1850. Any person, even white people, could be arrested, could be fined, could be jailed for helping runaways. Thomas Garrett was fined his life savings twice, about $5,000, which today that might be $500,000 or something. But he was also a very brave man who moved to Wilmington to be closer to the action and worked very closely with Harriet Tubman and William Still, who was in Philadelphia. Next. So media's always had this kind of unique dichotomy. This is there another slide before this or no? No. Okay, go ahead. So we're talking about slavery and oppression and that kind of thing. But there's always a strong African American community. Media, as you know, was a luxury area for wealthy Philadelphians who wanted to get out of the city. There were always these, the yellow fever epidemic. There were, with all the congestion and the sewage and everything and the heat, the wealthier people wanted to get out and stay in Media for the summer. And this is the Idlewild Hotel. And I just think these guys look so dapper. They really do. And I believe there was an elevator there, and they had running water as well. That's from the Media Historic Archives. Adam Levine is the chairman of that. Next. Brummel's Lake.
Excuse me, what
Yeah.
year was that building? What years was that building there?
I think that was there probably late 1900s to, I don't think it was there much past 1920.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 1870s too. I think up
Yeah.
to maybe 1930, but not beyond that.
Yeah. So about 50, 60 years span, but it was quite a popular place. I wish it was still there. Brummel's Lake, named after Judge John M. Brummel, who was also a Civil War soldier, owned all that land, and but it was segregated. So people of color could not swim there. Neither could my Jewish or Asian friends swim there as well. a classmate in high school of mine, the year behind me, he and his wife had their wedding reception there. I think her family, called in the reservation, and when the rest of the family showed up, guess who's coming to dinner? Yes. John.
Sam, just to mention the Idlewild, the manager's home is still there. That's where Lynn and Joe Elliott live.
Oh yes, I've been in that home. I've been in that home.
me too.
Yeah. That's a nice little community up there at the
Yes, it is.
top of the hill, up above the Jason house.
Didn't realize that.
So in '73, it was segregated, integrated, and it has been ever since. So, next, Johnny Weissmuller swam there once in a competition. Lots of places in media were segregated. The media theater certainly was. I had an uncle who married into the family. He was from Philly. In the 1940s, he came to media, wanted to go to the theater, and because he refused to sit in the colored section, he got arrested. So my great-grandfather, who was an attorney, had to go and bail him out of media jail. And then I think probably in the 60s, that kind of wore away, and people could sit wherever they wanted to.
It seems impossible that it was that recently, but
Yeah,
I know it's true. I mean,
Yeah, you're exactly right. And people think that this stuff was so, like slavery was so long ago. I mean, my grandmother knew her grandparents who were slaves. I knew my grandmother. I was fortunate that all that information that she got from them, she passed directly to me. So it didn't have to filter through a couple of generations. And, for, like I said, I mean, even, for me growing up as a kid in the 50s and 60s, there was still this prejudice and discrimination and segregation.
still is.
Yeah. Next. Media Province Friends School had some growing pains as well. Back in 1937, the first black student was admitted. It caused some consternation on the part of some white parents who took their children out of the school. But, the school stuck to its guns, and I'm glad that they did. And it's a very diverse student population today. Next.
Mayor of Chester went there.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Savon Roots.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So high school was another problematic period for me and many students of color. When I was there, back in the, I attended media, which was K to 12, until 1967 when the districts merged, and I went to Pencrest. So we had some really wonderful teachers. When I was there, we had the first teacher of color, and some of the teachers were really not very pleasant towards kids of color. And I had this music teacher who seemed like a very nice lady, and every week we would go to that class, and she would make us sing Dixie. Oh, I wish the land of cotton. And half the class was kids of color, who, I mean, most of us, if not all of us, must have had slave ancestors. And she would make us sing the song, and the only way I could think to resist was like mouth the words but not sing. And I wasn't the only one, apparently, because we go through a rendition of that, and she'd look at us and say, "Come on, let's do it again." And we do it again, and she, and you can see the wheels turning, like she's counting the number.
Results.
Yeah. What did the Einstein say? Keep doing the same thing and getting the same result. And you can see the wheels turning, like she's like counting how many kids are in the class, and she'd make us do it like 3 times, and finally she gets just frustrated and give up. But that kind of, I don't think she was inherently racist, but that's racism too, So that always bothered. I wrote about that in my doctoral dissertation at Penn. Next. So this is my great-grandfather, William H. Ridley, his diploma from Media High School in 1887. I was meeting with Adam Levine, who was head of the Media Historic Archives, and I showed this to him, and he said, "Wow, that's where that picture came from." He had a print of this picture. He didn't know where the picture. He thought it was just someplace in Philadelphia, and when he saw it, he said, "Wow!" So he scanned it, and they have a copy today. William started school here. He was born in the Minshall House, very sickly as a child. I'm not sure what he had, but it affected his vision. He was very poor-sighted after that. He missed a couple of years of school. So he finally went to school, graduated with honors in 1887, and then immediately began reading law in the office of Lewis Richards, a prominent attorney in media. In those days, I think there were some early law schools, but it was more prevalent that you would read law, study law in the office of an attorney, and then once you felt like you knew enough, then you would be examined by the local bar association, and if you knew all your laws and stuff, then you would be admitted as an attorney, and that's what he did. He did go to took some courses at the University of Pennsylvania to expand his knowledge of the law. And while I was at Penn, I went to the law school, and they looked up and to see if they could find any records, because I wanted to see like what kind of grades did he get. But their records, he said before 1900, what they have is very frail and very few. Next.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
That building?
Yes.
That's not the same one that's there now, right?
No, but that was the original Media High School. That was like back in the vicinity behind the courthouse.
Okay, so that building's not there anymore.
No. And then there was another, I guess that got old or something. They built another media high school or media public school on that site as well. Used to be a big parking lot there at one time behind the courthouse before they built the government center. And then in 1919 or 1920 or so, they built the new media school down here at front in the state. Next. So back in the old days, in the 1930s, they had minstrel shows, blackface minstrel shows at Media High School. He later became a prominent businessman, not wearing his blackface, but yeah. So it was, there was this weird dichotomy in media that, in some ways, it was quite progressive, but in other ways, it was quite regressive. Next. So here, is a good example. This is 1891. They have an officer of color. And media always seemed to have an officer of color. So again, they were very progressive in some ways, but his name is Turner. I've never been able to find out more about him. This is from the Media Historic Archives. But the mustaches and stuff. Next. So this was, the old. This is what the courthouse looked like in the old days, and the county prison. So you can see behind it that wall. This would be Orange Street, and that was county prison. Next. That's just another picture of it. Going through the Media Historic Archives, the photo that they have there are just really remarkable. So here's an 8-year-old boy that was in the county jail. I don't know why. It doesn't say why he was there, but he doesn't look very ferocious to me.
An 8-year-old boy.
Yeah, and well behaved.
Yeah.
But it made me feel sad when I saw that. Next.
Can I
Certainly.
make a comment about the picture of the boy?
Yes.
His clothes look pretty good.
Yes, they do.
So I'm wondering if he wasn't like resident there, but just came to visit someone.
No. He was listed as a prisoner.
Wow.
That's for wearing that hat like that.
Yeah. A little bit cocky.
Yeah.
But if you get to the next picture, you'll see this gentleman. He's one of the last people hanged in the jail. You can see how well he's dressed. Like a lot of the prisoners are quite well dressed. I don't know. And he's got all these decorations and
They
stuff.
don't have special outfits they had on, or we don't know that this is a picture.
I don't know. I've seen a number of pictures of people in that jail. They weren't wearing, what you expect to be, the striped prison garb.
And he's smiling.
And he's smiling. And so that was 1903. His name was Albert West. My grandmother said that there was a row of houses, behind, next to Media Providence Friends School, going from there to Orange Street, and the upper floors of the houses, you could look over the prison wall when they were hanging people. Yeah, and he was one of the last people hanged there. My understanding is that when they decided to hang him, all the Quakers in town left because they didn't want to be in media when this gentleman was being hanged. Next. This is just an article about he was involved in this murder. The headline just really stood out to me. Then, like a hunted animal, for all the officers of the city of Chester were on his trail, he followed the riverfront and marshes and avoided the public thoroughfares. So, I haven't read the article in details. I know he killed somebody by an officer, and I think he was drunk. There was some type of altercation. I think he killed this police officer. I don't think that was his intention, but that happened, and that's why he was sentenced to hang. Next.
That was the last guy we just, the last person.
Yeah, 1903. That was the last hanging in media. So these are two gentlemen, former U.S. colored troops, soldiers. They were the models for the statue on top of the building by the courthouse there, right in front of the courthouse. Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. I've seen that hundreds of times.
Yes,
Never thought about it.
Absolutely, really. Yeah. And you can see he's decorated. That looks like a Medal of Honor there. He had a very unfortunate ending. He moved to Philadelphia. He was living in an apartment building. Two guys broke in to steal his pension check and killed him. And so, for a decorated soldier, that was,
sad.
That was a sad ending. Yeah. But I just think they both look so distinguished. Next. Philip Gyson, I don't know how many might know of him. His house right there is located on South Gailey Street below Jefferson. And he was very, very prominent. He, as you can see, was a doctor, had a very successful practice. He's kind of considered a hero for supporting the Korean independence. As you can see, he was recognized by Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman. I've not been there. All the years I've lived in media, I've not been there. It wasn't open to the public for a long, long time, but it is now. So well worth a trip. But again, I just wanted to kind of give you a flavor of how diverse media really is. It's not just black and white. It's lots of other things. Next. These are my dear friends, the OI, the Providence Meeting folks will remember them. They had been interned in World War I in the internment camps. I'm sorry, World War II. In the internment camps, and just absolutely wonderful, wonderful people. And they met picking fruit and vegetables, I think, in New Jersey. I think they were sponsored by whoever was head of Pendle Hill at that time. Bruce, I don't know if you remember.
No, they were sponsored by Clarence Pickett, who was the General Secretary of the American Friends Service Committee, which was a national and, in a sense, global peace and justice organization.
Yep.
And he lived at Pendle Hill. Clarence Pickett lived at Pendle Hill.
That's right.
And was a member of Providence Meeting.
Yes.
And their son, Ken, in the back on the right there, and his wife, Willa, are still, or Ken just stepped down from his position as a professor in two departments at the MIT.
Yes. Clarence Pickett, as Bruce said, is very, very prominent man. He and British friends accepted the Nobel Peace Prize after World War II for the work that Quakers had done in Europe and helping to provide support and food and clothing for the civilian populations who had been. AFSC is still very, very active today, but he wrote this poem, and which I believe is right there on his headstone. I only heard him speak in meeting for worship once, and I've been a member there 34 years. And he talked about how when he was in the internment camp, it was someplace out in some godforsaken desert. I don't know if it was Arizona or someplace, but he said it was totally in contrast to where he lived in California. So the Japanese Americans and Japanese own some of the best land in California. And I can't help but think that was one of the reasons why they were interned and their land was confiscated. And he said there was nothing green, so they made these, like in front of the little places where they were living, these little stone gardens, very poor insulation. He said the wind blew dust into the house or cottage or whatever it was, building. He said the only people that would come visit them were Quakers. And he said they knew what was happening to Jews in Germany, and he was afraid that that's what was going to happen to them. And that's why he eventually became a Quaker. And it was just such a powerful, John?
Just an anecdote to that. When George and Kaz moved to Media for the first time, they lived in the house with my great uncle Edmund Dutton. Lived on the corner of 5th and Monroe, the brick house, right across from the bed and breakfast.
Oh wow!
On 5th Street.
Yeah.
And the reason I know that is because Meryl and I, when we joined the meeting in the early '80s, came up to us and told us that story. So, they were loved by many people.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. And I think the next house that they moved to was on Plum Street near 3rd.
Yeah.
And Media was kind of divided into a couple of black communities. And the black neighbors loved them. And they just felt such a warmth for that reception. Next. Media Fellowship House. I'm sure many of you know the story of how that was founded with Quaker Jane James and Marie Whitaker. Marie and her sister and daughter were denied service at some restaurant on State Street. Jane James and whoever she was having lunch with saw that, said to Marie, let's go someplace else to eat. And they had a conversation which grew into Media Fellowship House. And both were just really remarkable women. John, do you remember Jane James?
She's actually my first cousin once removed.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
her son was one of my best friends growing up.
Okay.
And at Media Friends.
And she was a member of Media Meeting, but
Yes.
not Providence Meeting. Yes.
Jane and Sam.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember Sam because he told me how to make hard cider.
That's good to know.
But Leon probably taught him.
We know where to come, Sam.
Yeah, he said just leave it in the back seat of your car, a couple of days and it's cold, and and he was right. He was a genius. But Media Fellowship House is extremely active today, and Bill Whitaker, Marie's son, he and I were in the same class together all through school. He donated his salary when he was guest hosting Jeopardy to Media Fellowship House. It was like $180,000, and they were able to really renovate that place and make it look really nice. The outside is really quite stunning. Next.
I think I know the Whitakers too.
Yeah. So this is a case that I spent 30 years of my life researching. Again, when I was living with my grandmom, she told me the history of this case, Alexander McClay Williams, and she had one newspaper article about the case. Alexander was a black student, born in Chester, was a student at Glen Mills School for Boys, which is really a prison for boys at that time, both white and black. And on Friday afternoon, October 3rd, 1930, one of the white matrons was found murdered in her bedroom. Police, the coroner, in doing his examination, found that she had been stabbed 47 times with an ice pick. She had a fractured skull and broken ribs. And so there were 600 students at the school, plus 100 or so staff members. They came up with a list of who was out of supervision at that particular time on that particular day. And Alexander was one of about 12 students who was out of supervision. And why he was out of supervision was that he was on a work crew with 5 black kids and him made 5 other white children. And his work supervisor sent him to the tool shed to go get 10 shovels. So the 2 boys go to this tool shed, and the the staff member in charge of the tool shed gave them 10 shovels. Each boy carried 5 shovels back to where they were working. They were patching part of the driveway there. And Alex says, here's a receipt from the tool shed supervisor. He wants you to, sign in and give it back to him so he knows you got the tools. And the supervisor said, work supervisor said, here, you take it back, and gave him the receipt to take back. He does that. So each trip took 20 minutes time with the 2 boys together and then with Alexander by himself. When he came back, he looked completely normal and just went back to work. So they whittled down this list to him, and they were just determined that he was the one who murdered this woman. It's ironic because he had been living in their cottage. It's a cottage system. The cottages are bigger than my house, but the third floors had dormitories that could fit about 40 boys. He had been living in her cottage, but her husband kept kicking him around on the floor, knocking the wind out of him. And when Vida would step in, the husband would punch her. And so Alexander asked to be moved. Of all the people on that campus, she was like a guardian angel for him. So I did a lot of research, just kind of pieced this case together. I found that the Roberts were actually divorced. They had been divorced around 1925, where they lived in Michigan on the grounds of extreme cruelty. For a woman to get a divorce on the grounds of extreme cruelty in 1925, it must have been pretty extreme.
You're dead.
Yeah. So I did all this research. They lost a couple kids. It was just really a horrible story. The husband came from a very violent family, hard drinking French Canadians. Brother of his spent 30 or 40 years in prison for a bludgeoning murder. What a coincidence. Another brother had spent time in prison. For some reason, they didn't focus on the husband at all. He just said, I don't know anything about this. And and they let it go at that. So this is the ice pick that they found in the room. That's the district attorney at the time. Alexander was interrogated 5 times without a parent or an attorney in the room. The first 3 times he vehemently denied any involvement, but by the 5th time, and it looks like he has a black eye. That left eye looks like a black eye to me.
Yeah.
As a matter of court record, that he had been flogged many, many times at the school, and he eventually made 3 confessions. I don't know why they needed 3. Each one I read, so I read the entire court transcript from 1930 and 31. Each confession got more lurid and more sophisticated than the one before it, and there's really nothing to tie him to the scene of the crime. But he was convicted, and in February of 1931, sentenced to death at the courthouse, and died in an electric chair June 8th, 1931, a couple of weeks shy of his 17th birthday. So I spent, is there one more slide about this, Bruce? No, Bruce.
Yeah.
Zach.
Okay, yes, Zach. So I said, like I said, I spent 30 years researching this case. It was incredibly grueling. It took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of me physically and also emotionally. Zach, is there one more after this? There's something I want to show you. We can go back to this if we need to. How about one more after this? No, okay, go back. Go back one more. One more? Is there one before this? Okay. Okay, stop. Okay, go back to the very next slide. Okay. What I was looking for is, and I didn't include it in this, but the Vida Roberts' death certificate was filed on October 4th after being examined by the coroner, and it was filed with the state. On the death certificate, it said, manner of death, stab wounds in the heart, with ice pick in the hands of Alexander McClay Williams. So that was October 4th. Alexander didn't make his first confession until October 7th. How would they know 3 days ahead of time that he was the murderer?
I'm thinking maybe someone told him he was.
With the black eye,
The one that he always liked to keep around.
Exactly.
And his wife defended him.
Exactly. And so when I read this trial transcript, they said he did this, he did this, he did this, he did this. And so I started taking notes. The prosecution accused him of 15 separate actions in a 20-minute time period. So they accused him of, returning the shovels, then going back to her cottage, trying to break in, trying to do a burglary. Somehow he hears her moving up in our bedroom, which is 2 flights up at the other end of the building. And he goes up and the door is open. Every door on that campus had a spring latch, so it automatically locked. Only staff had keys. You had to have keys to get anywhere. You had to have a key to get between floors. In the room where she died, there was next to the wall a bloody left handprint of a man next to the door. Didn't belong to him. Didn't belong to her. Didn't belong to her 10-year-old son. That was investigated by 2 fingerprint experts, one from Media, one from Philadelphia. It was photographed by the Pennsylvania State Police. It was never mentioned again. So it was, and I have a copy of his death certificate and autopsy. But there would be times when I'd be driving down the road and the thought of him sitting in that electric chair, like with a hood over his head, probably weeping his eyes, crying his eyes out, it would make me burst into tears. Like when you really think about the reality, when you desanitize, that image and understand what it was really like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. So as I said, I began doing research, and I finally tracked down a member of the family, his oldest surviving sibling at the time, Alice Graves, who lived in South Media. And I called her on the phone. I told her who I was. Told her
Graves?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
You know her?
Maybe. Graves lived right between our store and my uncle's house.
And she didn't want to talk to me. I could hear it in her voice. It was heartbroken. I mean, all those years later, she still carried all that. So she wouldn't talk to me, and a short time later she passed away, and I found the next surviving sibling, Susie, and I called the house, and her daughter answered, and her daughter tells me the story. She said, "You remember the time you called the house?" She said, "The phone was ringing. I wasn't going to answer it. I don't know. I was in a bad mood or whatever." And so I decided to answer the phone, and I picked it up, and you were on the phone. And she said, "After I talked to you, I hung up the phone and I cried for 15 minutes because I didn't think anybody cared." And so I did a power presentation at the family's house. I told them all this. They didn't know all this stuff about the case because once he was executed, the family never spoke about him again. The mother lost a baby. She lost all her hair. The father, substance abuse, alcohol problems. So many of the brothers did too. It just devastated that family. And one of the things that you can go to the next slide, Zach. One of the things that I talked with the family attorney with is that it's been scientifically proven through epigenetics that family trauma can be inherited in your genes. So and they did studies of Holocaust victims and victims from famine and slavery. When there's a terrible trauma in the family, even the person 2-3 generations down can inherit that trauma, not just physiological problems like, slave diets, many black people have hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, 8 generations of your family eat, high fat, high salty stuff, that gets passed down genetically, but the trauma gets passed down, too, which was really stunning. So anyway, I went to the Bar Association. I begged them for years. for help. They got me connected with Robert Keller. We worked together for 7 years or so. Finally got the case into court because Jack Stolzheimer was the first Democratic district attorney since the Civil War, and so we got it into court, and Mr. Stolzheimer was very cordial to me, and Rob took me in to meet with him. He liked my research. I wrote a book about the case, which you'll see later, and so that's Miss Susie. This is in June of 2022, and the courtroom was packed with Quakers, of course. And when the judge overturned the verdict, the room erupted in applause. And Rob and I were feeling nervous because, you're not supposed to cheer in court. But everybody, was just so thrilled by this late but powerful act of justice. And so that's a picture of us there that day. Her sister, her daughter in the background, that's the one who I called on the phone that day. So I wasn't satisfied with that. Rob laughs at me about it now. So I wrote to John Fetterman, who was assistant governor at the time, because he was the chair of the Pennsylvania Parole and Pardons and Parole Board. So I wrote to them and I said, hey, there have been a few other cases in the country where people get pardons of innocence, not just a pardon, because a pardon is an admission of guilt. That's just saying, okay, we punished you enough, we're going to let you off the hook now. I didn't want that, I wanted, there were 2 or 3 cases in the entire country where the evidence was so compelling that showed that this person couldn't have committed the crime, that the governors wrote, in the pardon, that this is a pardon of innocence. So the office wrote back to me. I was really pleasantly surprised. And what he did was he issued this pardon. It's not a pardon, actually. It's a proclamation publicly acknowledging the wrongful conviction and execution of Alexander and apologizing to the family. And it's very, 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 very nice document. And so Bar Association hosted a special meeting at the bar. We had the family come, and the governor sent the secretary of the Board of Pardons and Parole to hand deliver a copy of this to Miss Susie. So she said, I waited my whole life for this. She's 94 now, and that's just we had tons of publicity about the case. The case made news media in France, in Egypt, in South Africa, Indonesia, the United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, and it's funny because if you look at the postings on the foreign press, it always mentioned kind of this is what they do to black people in America. They weren't just reporting the story. They were pointing out that this is what happens in America. Sometimes to young black people, but it was it was really a great day, and it was a huge relief to me. I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For those 30 years, I felt like I often thought about when Noah was building that ark. Didn't he want to call in sick some days? That's what I was feeling. Bruce,
Sam. So that headline.
Yes.
Exonerated by defense lawyer's great-grandson?
Mm-hmm. So what they're saying is my research, my 30 years of research, that that the district attorney used, that's what got Alexander.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
It was your grandfather.
Yeah, my great-grandfather. Yeah.
Your great-grandfather. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are okay.
Yeah.
I knew that. I'm sorry. I was flipping it around and sort of thinking, is the judge somebody?
No. That's me. But this is a whole new area for Delaware County and for the district attorney. There had never been a case like this before, and I did really most of the legal research because a lot of which I based on the George Stinney Jr. case. George Stinney was a 14-year-old in South Carolina who was executed in 1944. The cases were very, very similar on the basis of no evidence. So his case got overturned back in 2012 or 2014. And the judge, Kevin Kelly, in this case, he happened to be on vacation down there, and somehow he came across the story of this kid, George Stinney Jr., and he calls the district court judge in South Carolina and talks to her about it. And he was doing his own research. So he mentioned that in his, in his justification for overturning Alexander's conviction, because there's not such a thing in Pennsylvania. That was part of the problem. The Sidney case was overturned on the grounds of something called coram nobis, which is one of those old ancient writs, that. It basically means what remains before us, or in a sense, kind of this is obvious, And so it's kind of like habeas corpus. There are these 3 or 4 like ancient writs that go back to medieval England, and that's what they use down there. We don't have that in Pennsylvania. We don't have coram nobis. We have a Post-Conviction Relief Act thing. But the problem with PICRA, they call it, is you have to be alive to petition the court to overrule your sentence. Well, the kid's been dead 90 years. Like, he can't be here, So the judge said, I researched 300 years of Pennsylvania law and could find no ruling or no law that applied to this case. So I'm using the same legal precedent. And it was just really astonishing. So, next. So those are my 2 books. Go Stand Upon the Rock is based on my family's stories from my grandmother about how my ancestors escaped from slavery, came to media, got established, how their son became the first African-American attorney in Delaware County in 1891. And then this is a case about Alexander's, a book about Alexander's case. I'm way behind on my sequels to both books. It doesn't include his exoneration. And the family last year filed a lawsuit in federal court for damages against Delaware County, which is in contention right now. So, and I think that's it, Zach, isn't it? Just, thank you to, Historic Archives. I don't know if you've ever been to the Stephen Appleton. His house is still there on West State Street, across from First Church. Is that what it's called? And his collection is in the, you can view his collection online. Actually, you don't even have to go to the media library. It's just a remarkable set of photographs, black and white photographs, that are so crisp and sharp they look like they were taken yesterday. In all facets of life around media. There's a great photo that I always send to the guy who does our newsletter at Providence every Thanksgiving. A whole herd of turkeys standing outside of the door, outside of the wall. I'm saying they're trying to decide whether they're invited to dinner or for dinner. But it's a really cute picture. So that's my presentation. I want to thank you so much for listening. So it's a lot to go through. You can turn the volume.
Sam, that was wonderful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I really wanted to try and not just tell my family story, but how diverse media is. How many different groups of people we have, here, and I think that really helps make it a great place to live. Mm-hmm. Anybody have questions for me?
I have a question, but I just want to say I thought it was really brilliant the way you weaved your family story into the telling of the history of the community and the neighborhood. I really like that approach, and also dedicating 30 years of your life to the exoneration of this young boy who was wrongfully convicted is a really beautiful thing. And I just want to know, do you feel, even though you never met him, do you still feel a connection in that maybe he senses what was done?
Absolutely. So the first part, I didn't intend to spend 30 years. So I heard about the story when I was 10. And as I grew into adulthood, that's when I began doing all the primary research. A group of folks and I, he's buried at Green Lawn Cemetery on Concord Road in Chester. It's an abandoned cemetery, unfortunately. There is a Friends of Green Lawn group that now try to clean it up and keep it. But searching for his grave was really, and finding his grave was even more powerful. And I'll have to give you a lecture about that another time. But I came to love that kid. I came to feel so connected, not just to him, but to Vida Robert too, the poor woman who was murdered. When I read about her, she was this hardworking, highly respected, young woman who was making her own way at life, and got divorced in Michigan. And I think the husband kind of trailed her here and probably said, "Oh, our son needs a father," and they didn't seem to be living together in the same apartment at the school. But for what he did to her, he kind of killed two people in that regard. But I felt such a strong connection, and now by extension, his family. They consider me one of the family now, which I do too.
To the husband?
Good question. So the husband takes his 10-year-old son, goes to stay with his brother, a brother of his who lives in Washington, D.C., dumps the kid off there, and then goes back to Michigan, gets remarried, and drives a bus for Trailways until he died. The son made his way by himself across the country, state by state by state. I tracked him down at 4 different high schools, and he eventually enlisted in the Army, spent some time in Hawaii, and then died young, 50s, severe alcoholism, and he was a heavy smoker, cancer, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But with tracking him down in those high schools, he was a member of football teams, he was a member of the swimming team, he was very active athletically. The Daily Times, when the body was found, he actually came home from school. I think he was going to Aston Elementary or something at the time. He comes from the school, goes to his mother's bedroom, and he's in there for an hour until he leaves, and the husband comes up and finds the body. The article in the Daily Times said he's so nearsighted, like he didn't see the mother's body. And you can't do that and play football. Or serve in the Army, shoot guns and stuff. And I think that, they didn't want the public to be traumatized by thinking here's this 10-year-old boy was actually the one that found his mother's body. But, I feel like here are 3 separate, disparate families, the family of the attorney, the family of Alexander, and the family of the victim all kind of got together. And I tracked down a relative of Vida Robert through Ancestry.com, and we had a special event at Swarthmore College. We did a podcast, 6-part podcast. She came out. It was really great to meet her in person. So here are the descendants of these 3 different families who none of us met in person, but all of us met through this horrible tragedy, and we all felt really close, bonding together. So good question.
Powerful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Yes.
One of the very early slides had a picture, I guess, of your 2 great-grandparents, the man who was a carriage driver.
Yes.
The woman on the right-hand side, how is she connected?
On the far right?
Yeah.
That's Grace Anna Lewis.
Yes.
She's an abolitionist.
Okay.
So
is she a relative or something?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay, I was confused.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she was a really important abolitionist, really important member of Providence Meeting.
All right.
And just to show that people were actively, as with the Yarnalls. The Yarnalls is like a huge family, like a constellation family. How they were active in helping freedom seekers, get here and live a life in freedom. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the 2 Civil War soldiers was a Benson.
Yes.
And obviously related to our local Bensons, like many have lived on South Avenue, or what?
Not maybe.
Okay.
He actually is from New Jersey.
Oh, gotcha.
But in those days, people didn't think much of distances. People used to walk to Chester. In the old days. Not me.
Not that old.
Yeah, I'm not that old.
Okay, so you can't tie him in with...
No, I'll have to do some more genealogy, but that was my first... Because I went to school with Bertie Benson, who was like a year ahead of me in school. I knew the Bensons well. And so I was curious, when I did the research and found that guy's name was Benson. He looks like a Benson to me, and I think it's very possible. I just can't say positively at this point. Yeah, but that's a great question. Never been asked that before.
So my son Nathan went to Media Friends with a Parham.
Oh, really?
It makes me wonder.
There's a Parham attorney named
Erica Parham.
Erica and Cole. Yeah, Cole's.
I've written her a couple times. I've never gotten a response from her, but she looks, I think, I showed you the younger picture of my great-great-grandmom. I have an older picture of, oh yeah, up there, on next to,
Next to the young picture?
yeah, up there, yeah. She looks like, you know, when I saw the picture of Erica Parham, as they say, down yonder, yeah, there could be a relation there. But yeah, I tried to reach out to her, but she just never wrote back to me. So didn't want to borrow money or anything. I just wanted to know. You know.
Never know.
Yeah. I could always use a couple bucks.
So I'm just curious, these stories that you heard
Yes.
as a child, and then how you lived your life with this interest in genealogy and history. Was that a continuum, or were there other influences in your life? Like, were you destined for what you became because of the stories that you heard in childhood?
Yes. Next question. No, absolutely. Like I said, I was 10 years old, living with my grandma, and I just absorbed this knowledge. And when she told me that her grandmother had been a breeding woman, she looked at me and she said she was a breeding woman, you know. And I don't know how I knew what that meant at the age of 10. I mean, I knew that, you know, horses were bred and dogs were bred, but I never heard about breeding people, you know. And that was a cottage industry in the Upper South.
Virginia was big for birth.
Huge, because the plantations in the Deep South, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, they were always in need of more slaves, because once you got sold down the river, as they would say, your life expectancy was about 4 years. So they were burning people up, you know, working them to death down there. And then you have a lot of poisonous snakes and insects and brutal. That book, 12 Years a Slave.
Just going to mention that.
That was astonishing.
It was amazing that he lived.
It was astonishing. Yeah, it was miraculous. Nobody ever does that, you know. But when she told me that fundamentally changed my outlook on women and children for the rest of my life. So I don't like a lot of men, you know, in the sense, like I mean, it's not like I've been a choir boy all my life, because I haven't, but it's important to me how women and children are treated. You know, it's always been personally important to me. And later, as an adult, I worked for Children's Needs Services for 13 years, and I have some trauma from that, from some of the cases that I saw and heard about. And when I was working there, my daughter was born, and once she was born, I lost that emotional armor. You know, before that, you know, it was, you know, 20-something, we were all in our 20s, and, you know, that kind of stuff, and we could take that pretty well. Not that it didn't make us sad or, you know, make us want to go out on Friday nights and drink a lot, you know, together and, you know, commiserate. But once she was born, like I couldn't separate my personal life and my professional life anymore. And like I said, there's a couple stories that I carry with me today that you know, I have this problem with people who are cruel to children and animals. You know, I really do. That's the Mr. Hyde part of Dr. Lemon. So it did. Yeah, it's a great question. It made a profound impact on me. And then hearing that story, I felt like I was a witness to a crime, and I couldn't look away. You know, I didn't tend to spend all the time like working on that case, and it was not a pleasant experience much of the time. Most of the time, it was not. But I felt like, you know, I couldn't look away, and I felt like, you know, like around about the 30th year, I'm thinking like, you know, what if I don't get anywhere with this? But that part I can live with. You know, if I failed, I can live with that. What I couldn't live with is not trying. You know. Because I felt like I owed it to my great-grandfather. I felt like, you know, I kind of like, and I'll tell you, I felt like he was guiding me through much of this. I really do, because the attorneys I was working with, very, very few. I talked with one of the attorneys for George Cini Jr., but other than that guy, many of the attorneys I talked to, this is a whole new territory for them. You know, and certainly, you know, my work with the local attorneys here and district attorney, like nobody. I was doing their legal research, you know, And I wanted that because I knew what I was looking for, and I knew it. I found a article in the Penn Law Review about pardons and stuff. So everything I got, I was feeding them. And so with the attorney for the family now in federal court, I sent him a whole bunch of information on epigenetics, because if you're talking about damages,
they're still going on.
They're still going on.
Right, I know, and they even say that sometimes it skips a generation that might not affect the parent. It affects the grandchildren. That they're finding that children of Holocaust survivors, grandchildren.
Absolutely. You inherit depression. I mean, some of them have told me, I feel depressed sometimes. I'm not sure why. Well, this is why, So, any other questions? You've been such a great group. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Think about anything else, you can always get in touch with me through these good folks here. But thanks for coming out today. Really appreciate it.
We'd like to thank Dr. Lemon for his presentation, and we'd like to thank you all for coming out and for a wonderful evening.
Thanks for squeezing. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for squeezing in the room. Yeah.